Toni Frissell by Priscilla Noriega. Who is Toni Frissell? Toni Frissell is Antoinette Frissell Bacon, was born on March 10, 1907. She was an American photographer known for her fashion photography, World War II photographs, and portraits of famous Americans, Europeans, children, and women from all walks of life. She's also known, a quote was known from her, and it's, "I'd rather stalk with a camera than a gun." How did Toni become a photographer? When Toni Frissell was younger, she was passionate about theater, but after 2 roles in Max Reinhardt production, she realized that theater was not for her. In the early 70s, she began to have trouble with her memory. So to counteract this, she began to write a journal, one that turned into almost a 1,000-page manuscript. Her journal recounts the times from her childhood to her later life, detailing her privileged upbringing, exploration of Europe, parties in her 20s, youth romance, and love for the richer way of life. This early fascination with the privileged life influenced the choice and subjects of her photographs, and more privileged sports such as skiing and golf that she went on to photograph for Sports Illustrated. She was an American photographer. She did fashion photography. She was also a photographer for in World War II and for Vogue. And I went ahead and got a few samples of her photos. That way you guys could get an idea. At the beginning of her career, she worked briefly for Vogue. For Vogue, she was actually a caption writer. She was making captions and writing a bit for the magazine. She was actually fired from Vogue because of her poor spelling, but was encouraged by Vogue's fashion editor Carmel Snow to take up photography. She did take his advice, and she took up photography to cope with the illness of her mother and the death of her brother. Toni Frissell was one of Vogue's first female photographers. She was considered among the most pioneering photographic artists. Her fashion photography broke new ground as she created images of women that were active, often outdoors rather than in a studio, and employing unusual angles. And here are, I went ahead and got a few samples of the cover of Vogue that were photographed by Toni Frissell. On your left-hand side, I got some photographs that Toni Frissell took, and on your left-hand side is Frida, and this was taken in 1935. And on your right-hand side, I don't know if you can see it in the video, it's kind of really dark, but it's The Lady in Water, and it was taken in 1947. It's a model floating in the water at the Weequahic Spring, Florida. Here are some more photos, and on your left-hand side, you'll find the fashion model underwater in a dolphin tank, and this was in Marineland, Florida. This was 1939, and it was the January issue of Vogue. On your right-hand side, you'll find 3 models that hold hands on a beach, and this actually appeared in the 1935 May issue of Vogue. This one here is one of the other photographs that it actually, how I had mentioned before about how Toni Frissell's fashion photography broke new ground because she created new images. This is like one that was also that's considered that, and it's was appeared in 1941 June issue in the June issue of Vogue, and it's a woman bounces a camera while she's holding a child's hand, trying to prepare him to take a picture. But as we can see, he's actually very distracted other than the camera. World War II in 1941, Toni Frissell volunteered her photographic services to the American Red Cross. Later, she worked for the 8th Army Air Force and became the official photographer of the Women's Army. On their behalf, she took thousands of images of nurses, frontline soldiers, African American airmen, and orphanage children. She traveled to European front twice. Her moving photographs of military women and African American fighter pilots in the elite 332D fighter group, and these were actually used to encourage public support for the women and African Americans in the military. And here are two examples, documents that I got, and they're war documents. And the bottom one is actually her identification certification. And here are some photographs from World War II that Toni Frissell took. On your left hand side, you'll find the airmen in Italy, and this was taken March 1945. On your right hand side, you'll find this a photograph of the Women's Army, and this was taken April 1943. In the 1950s, she took informal portraits of famous and powerful in the United States and Europe, included Winston Churchill, Eleanor Roosevelt, and John F. and Jacqueline Kennedy, and worked for Sports Illustrated and Life magazines. Throughout her photographic career, she worked at home and abroad for these large publications. And in this one here, the photograph, it's Kennedy's wife, Jacqueline Kennedy, at her 1953 wedding, about to throw her bouquet. Also, Toni Frissell donated to the Library of Congress a huge collection of her photographic work, covering as a distinguished career of nearly 40 years. The collection includes 42,000 color transparencies and 25,000 prints and 270,000 black and white negatives. However, this is only a few of Frissell's images have been digitalized, and they are hoping that there will be more digitalized in the near future of the photographs to demonstrate her great talent. And that's works cited. And that's it. Thanks.